what you spend your time and what you spend your money on is what's important to you. You can tell me things are important to you in your life, but if I can take a step back and assess your life and see what you spend your time and your money on, I can tell you whether or not what you told me is important is actually what's important to you. If you could go back in time for like a day, where would you go?
I don't need 24 hours. I need like 30 seconds.
People who have made it, if you will, or are successful, have accomplished things in life, are the people who will encourage you and push you to be better, right? It's always the people who are doing less than you and who have done nothing are the people who are trying to hold you back.
That's right.
I love people, you know. Sometimes I hate people, but I just love people, and I love genuine relationships. I love building genuine relationships. And like, that's one of my superpowers, right? It's just sitting around and talking and building each other up. And like, hey man, how did you navigate those waters in life?
Special edition Blues the New White episode with Ben Poole. Ben, man, it's great to finally meet you in person. Somebody that I don't know very well, but I respect a hell of a lot for everything that you've done. We've talked a couple times, but what's up, man? Why are you here?
Man, that's a great question. Now I just came down to Arizona to visit my grandparents. Obviously, I'm from Arizona, and so I have a lot of family here. And I know I've been wanting to do something with you for a long time. I don't even remember the first time we ever linked up, but it's been a while. Yeah. And yeah, I just don't want to do virtual podcast stuff. So yeah, it was like, this was just a great opportunity. And I was actually supposed to come down here for a photo shoot, and then the photo shoot dates got moved. So the photo shoot was supposed to be today, and then they ended up happening like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So the team decided to move up everything. And I was like, well, I already made travel arrangements, but whatever, it's fine. So photo shoot's done. Pictures came out great. That was a cover photo shoot for the December issue of the magazine that's coming out. So,
all right on. Any sneak peeks available? Let us know what's going on.
No sneak peeks.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
No, I don't want to ruin the surprise.
It's all good, man.
But yeah, when it comes out, people will be like, what the heck? It's going to be funny. It's going to be cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely is going to touch on the season. So the Christmas season.
Okay, right on.
So yeah, just trying to, again, just do stuff that's never really been done. You know?
Hell yeah.
So
that seems to be your MO. Speaking of which, man, so I've got two questions I like to open every show with. And so the first one, I used to ask, what are you an expert in? But what's your superpower? Makes a little bit more sense, right? Because it speaks a lot more to something innate, right? Something inside you, something that may not be your vocation, but is something you are incredibly good at. So let's start there.
Yeah, I mean, if there was two things, like I've always said that I'm good at a lot of different things. Two things that I'm great at is HVAC and music. Those are two things that I've really honed skills in and taken time because I was truly passionate about them. But I would say my superpower is motivating people, encouraging people, lifting people up, serving people. I feel like that's probably my greatest gift that I have. And I do it not because I feel obligated to do it. I do it because I just feel like it makes me feel like I'm complete, if you will. You know, like building people up around me is just part of who I am. And I feel like when I can do that, it's like I'm at peace with all things, you know?
That's amazing. You know, that's why I like to you know, that's why I pivoted from what are you an expert in to what's your superpower? Because I get answers like that. And that's what I'm most curious about today. You know, we can get into the HVAC stuff and maybe even a little music stuff. It'd be kind of cool. But that superpower I want to hone in on, you know. So first and foremost, before we actually kind of dive into the conversation, what is it by the end of this conversation you and I have that you want our audience to take away?
I think what I would want to leave the audience with would be, trying to be the best is great, but man, just do your best. Be your best. Like, it doesn't matter what your craft is. It doesn't matter if you're in HVAC. It doesn't matter if you're in plumbing. It doesn't matter if you're flipping hamburgers at McDonald's. Like, just be the best that you can possibly be, right? And I feel like when you try to attain that, it's not long before somebody else comes around and notices that you are incredibly great at what you're doing and you're extremely passionate about something as simple as flipping hamburgers at McDonald's. And that attitude and skill and that passion leads into somebody going, man, do you want a job? I want you on my team, right? And you never know. They could be making movies. They could be, doing podcasts. Whatever it may be. They could be building custom hot rods. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, right?
Yeah.
It's like people who are great in their craft and run successful companies are constantly looking for people who are great at what they do and have a passion for what they're doing. And I think that when you have that attitude, man, the world opens up to you as far as possibilities and opportunities go. But when you're going through the motions and you don't care and it's just a job, right? Yeah. Everybody notices that this guy's lazy. He doesn't care. And I'm just going to order what I'm going to order and I'm out.
Very, very, very true. So let's talk about that. Let's kind of unravel that a little bit. Why would somebody slip into that mindset as opposed to the mindset you want them to be in?
I think people just become people become like zombies, right? They just run through the motions. People are so caught up looking forward to, man, it's Friday. I can't wait for the weekend. I'm just going to go party. It's like we fill our lives with just nonsense and things that don't matter, right? When you're fast forward, right? Like if anybody's listening, close your eyes for a second and just imagine 40, 50 years from now, you're laying on your deathbed in the hospital, right? You have 24 hours to live and you know that you're going to die in 24 hours. What are you doing with that 24 hours? You're laying on a deathbed, right? Are you going to tell your kids and your wife, if you still have a wife, that hey, bring me those medals that I won when I was in high school. Bring me the certificates from my diploma that I got or my degree when I was in college, right? None of that stuff. It's quite the opposite. You're like, hey, where are my kids at? Bring my kids in here. Yeah. I want to talk to my kids. I want to tell them how much I love them and how amazing this opportunity was to be their dad, And I think that a lot of people just miss that mark. I think we have to start looking at life in a long-term basis and not on what's going to happen tomorrow. You know what I mean? So from a faith perspective, like I'm a Christian and I've started to make decisions in my life based on eternity, not based on what's going to happen 6 months from now, not what's going to happen in 12 months from now. Right? I think when you can change the perspective on how you see things, like everything in your life begins to like become very, very clear of what your goals are, what you want out of life, who's important in your life, how you want to spend your time in your life. Time is the only resource we can't get back, right? So
that's amazing.
I can go make money.
Yeah.
I mean, money's just a tool, right?
Yeah.
I can spend all my money I have today and I can go make more money tomorrow, right? But I can't get today's time back.
That's right.
So
I always tell people that, when they say, can you lend me some of your time? I say, you don't lend time, you give time.
Yeah.
And there's a big, big difference, right? And it's interesting to hear you say that. So, I think this might be where people get a little bit confused because the importance of a long-term vision like that and goals and it can't be overstated. However, there's also this pull to live in the present, right? There's also this pull that I see from you, right? It's almost like an authenticity thing of respecting the present moment. This is, at the end of the day, probably why you want to do in-person podcasts, right? You respect this present moment.
Time. Yeah.
So how do you balance the two?
It's just about intentionality, right? What you spend your time and what you spend your money on is what's important to you, right? You can tell me things are important to you in your life, but if I can take a step back and assess your life and see what you spend your time and your money on, I can tell you whether or not what you told me is important is actually what's important to you, And so for me, like I love people, sometimes I hate people. I think we've all been there, right? But I just love people and I love genuine relationships and I love building genuine relationships. And like, that's one of my superpowers, right? Is just sitting around and talking and building each other up and like, hey man, how did you navigate those waters in life? Like I would ask you like, man, how long have you been podcasting? Right? Yeah. How did you get started? Yeah. What would be one of the biggest pieces of advice you could give to somebody who was trying to start a podcast? Right? How did you start your mechanical company, your electrical company? Or was it plumbing and HVAC?
Well, it's HVAC and kitchen equipment.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So like, how did you start that? How long ago did you start it? What are some of the struggles that you had with all that stuff? Right? Like those are all relevant questions that if I'm trying to start a company like that, or I'm trying to start a podcast, like, don't you think we should have this conversation? You know? So it's like, you don't have to make mistakes in your life. Like, you're going to, no doubt about it. Right. But man, you can learn so much from other people, and other people who have already been there and done it want to help you, you know, like all these guys on social media where the comment section is like, gives 0 Fs, right? Like the internet always wins. It's funny, but it's like one of those things where, the comment section just shows people's true colors, right? And it's like people who have made it, if you will, or are successful, or have accomplished things in life, are the people who will like encourage you and push you to be better, right? Yeah. It's always the people who are doing less than you and who have done nothing are the people who are trying to hold you back. That's right. You know? And I just have a real problem with that, man.
Yeah, no, I totally get that, and I totally see it, right? I think everybody does, you know, which is, I mean, it's a testament to, you know, why you should seek out people who have done it before, who have been there, who have done the things that you want to do or that you aspire to be, you know, for this type of advice. That's one of the reasons why we're sitting down now, because I respect the hell out of your mindset. You put that shit out there, man. I mean, you really do. It's all over Instagram. It's all over your social media. You can just tell that it comes from a place that is authentic to you. So my question is, because, you know, you gave the example of how did I start the podcast? How did I start the business? You know, but what I'm most curious about from my audience, from you, is how you got into this mindset, right? Because this, I think, is what people are going to be. They're going to have their ear, you know, to the speaker, trying to understand how they can think a little bit more like you, not exactly like you in their own way, right? But with the same triggers that you have to think this positively about yourself and about people. So my first question, I guess, is have you always been this way?
That's a great question. Yes and no. I think that circumstances in my life have forged me into the person I am today, right? Like, I just had this conversation with somebody just last night, and I did a reel on this a couple weeks ago. Circumstances in your life, seasons is what we call them in your life, right? They have the ability to build character within you if you allow them to. For some people, the circumstances and the seasons in your life just absolutely ruin you, and it drives you to drugs, it drives you to alcohol, it drives you to all kinds of crazy vices in life, right? And it's really a choice. So, you know, and I get it, right? Like, that's when you say that, there's, well, what about this person didn't choose to have cancer, or didn't choose to be sick, or didn't you, right? It's like, I get that. I understand that. But a lot of times when we approach a situation in our lives, you may not have had a choice to control that particular situation, but how you respond to it is 100% a choice, right? There's a lot of people who get diagnosed with cancer and they're like, hey, bud, you're going to die, right? Now, some people give up on life at that point and they die really fast, right? Because it's a mental game and not just a physical game. It's a mental game. And so, and on the flip side of that, a lot of people are like, hey man, you're going to die of cancer in 6 months. And I'm not going to die of cancer, right? I'm going to beat this. It's a mindset, right? And you have to make the choice, no matter what the circumstances are, that I am bigger than my circumstance, right? And for me, again, back to my faith, like, I serve a God who's bigger than any circumstance. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I think for me in my faith, like, that's where the rubber meets the road for me. And it's always my pillar. It's always like where I fall back to. But I've gone through a lot of crazy things in my life, and I've been able to do a lot of really cool things in my life for being as young as I am. Yeah, man, I just feel like if other people can, like, I say this very loosely because I am a somebody, but like, I'm a nobody, you know what I mean? Like, and if a nobody like me coming from a podunk little town in Arizona can, accomplish really cool things in life, like, so can you, man. You know what I mean? Like, how much greater are you than me? You know what I mean? I'm just a regular dude who happens to do HVAC for a living, and I'm just passionate about what I'm doing. And so, yeah, I don't really have like a specific circumstance in my life where it's like, oh, this changed my life forever, right? It's just been these constant seasons in my life where I learn from it and I move on, and I don't let these things destroy me,
Okay. So I want to pause there for my audience and just point out what I'm hearing and correct me if it's not correct, right? But what I'm hearing is it's an awareness piece. It's an awareness of the circumstances that can shape you, and then it's a choice of how it's going to shape you, right? Because it's always one or the other. We're not necessarily, how do I put this? We are products of our environment, of our circumstances, of our thoughts, but it's also a result of the choices we make regarding those.
For sure.
Right. So it actually reminds me of, I just read a book recently. I forgot what it was called, but you know who Sigmund Freud is, you know who Carl Jung is.
Yes, yeah.
Yep. And so there was actually a third psychologist. His name was Alfred Adler. Do you know who he is?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so Freud and Jung took a stance in the psychology world with trauma, right? And they said basically trauma shapes a person. And, there's a lot of nuances in there. So, like, anybody who's really into psychology can correct me and let me know in the comments. I'm sure you will. But, that was essentially, in a nutshell, what they determined is trauma defines a person. And they were both from the same era. And actually, Adler was too, but he actually took an opposite stance, opposite in the psychology jargon. But he said it's not the trauma that shapes the person. It's how they view the trauma that shapes the person. So as you're talking, this is the kind of stuff that's it's going through my head from a philosophy and from a psychology standpoint, that it errs more on the side of Adler, right? Who says, basically the example is this. If you grow up in a broken home and you have an alcoholic father, right? Why is it then that every person who grows up with an alcoholic father in a broken home doesn't end up in the exact same place? It's because they view what happened to them differently.
Made a choice.
They made a choice,
yeah.
Right? So that's incredible, and that's the kind of stuff that I think my audience can actually really use, and that's the stuff that's hard. Like, we can teach people HVAC all day long, right? We can do that, but the mindset stuff, this is the stuff that changes people's lives.
For sure. Yeah, I think it boils down to life is full of decisions and then commitments to those decisions. And so you have to decide what it is you want to do, right? Like, when people come into the trade, I go, man, being in the HVAC business is like being a doctor. What kind of doctor do you want to be, right? Yeah. Like, you can do all kinds of different things. It's like, make a decision what you want to do, and then just decide to be the best at that, right? And just run in that lane, man, and be the best that you can possibly be. So, but you have to be committed to it. Mm-hmm. It's like no professional athlete runs on talent alone. Like, you don't get into the pros on just talent alone. Like, it takes hard work, right? And I think a lot of people in life, and my daughter is one of these people, right? She plays the trumpet and she's like kind of naturally good at it, right? And she doesn't practice as much as she should, because if she did, she would be amazing at it, right? But she is relying on her raw talent. And a lot of people in life who are naturally gifted or naturally talented rely on this natural talent. And it's like, it will get you far, but it will only get you so far, because it takes that extra push and that extra effort and that grind to master the skill, right? Yeah. Doesn't matter if it's playing a trumpet, doesn't matter if it's HVAC, it doesn't matter what the craft is. It takes intentionality. It takes a decision and a commitment to be the best.
That's amazing. My dad actually said the same thing to me when I was growing up. He said, kid, I don't care what you do for a living, just as long as you be the best at it. Yeah. Now, that's a little different than what you're saying, right? You're saying the best that you can be. He told me to be the best. In a sense, he was saying the same thing. He was saying that if you're going to be a garbage man, you be the best damn garbage man
that you can possibly
be, because it will open up doors and opportunities for you, and I mean, I thank my lucky stars every day that he instilled that mindset in me, because, I don't know how much you know about my past, but I was not always in the trades. I was a stuntman in a previous life. And so kind of going from the film business in Hollywood, right? Red carpet, all that glitz and glam kind of stuff, to fixing fryers and ovens and stoves. To me at the time, I could have very easily seen that as a step back, when in fact it was a step forward, because the things that it's led to, just like you, have been incredible, right? I've got a best-selling book published in 2019. I was able to get that into schools all over the country, change the mindset of the skilled trades, the blue-collar trades, in thousands of kids, which is amazing. And that led to the podcast, right? Being able to speak to, I think, your guest 188. I mean, just some incredible minds. And just aside from what I've been able to deliver to the world through that and through these minds that I'm able to speak to, the amount of download and learning that I've been able to do as a result has been huge, only to propel me forward even more, to help me run my business and speak on stage and do all this stuff. And I say that, not to humble brag on my own podcast, sure, right? But to show people what's possible doing exactly what you are saying. Be the best at whatever it is that you're doing, the best that you can possibly be, and pour yourself into it, because you have no idea where it can lead.
Yeah. And I think you got to be careful too, like where the line of ego begins, 100%. Right? Like, yeah, you walk around like, oh, I'm the best. You know what I mean? Like, man, I took time to hone my skills. You know what I mean? And it's like, pump the brakes, hold on a second. It's like, you have to be intentional about trying to be the best that you can possibly be, constantly learning, right? Trying to achieve this so-called mastery of your craft, but you never arrive at that. It's just a constant goalpost that just keeps moving on you.
Infinite game.
Yes. Right? It's a long-term game that lasts a lifetime.
Yeah.
So you never get, especially in this business, you never get to a point where you know everything there is to know. Nobody does, right?
Yeah.
But something you also got to remember is that there's always somebody in the room who knows more than you do,
That's
right? And you'd be surprised at what you can learn if you just stop talking and you listen.
100%.
And I used to be the opposite of that. I would be the guy who walked in the room and I'd want to flex how much I knew, right? And it was one time in particular that a guy humbled me in front of a room full of my peers, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that feeling, and it changed my perspective on, I need to learn more humility, and I need to be better, And so for me, it's about, again, just constantly pushing the envelope, constantly pushing people to push their own personal envelope, and just be great at what they do.
Yeah, no, I really love that. And I love the word of caution, right? Because it's so easy that once you do reach a certain point to look back and say, I am the best, but it won't be long before somebody corrects you in that.
There's guys in our industry right now who are influencers, who are great at what they do, and they know that they're great at what they do. And that's going to be their biggest downfall.
That's right.
And so, my thing is like, just love on them, and if I'm friends enough and good enough friends with them that I could tell them, hey, you need to dial it back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and if they're as good of friends as you think that they are, then they'll willingly and openly receive that,
100%.
But it's just a dangerous game, man. It's like ego and pride. I mean, we did a whole podcast on ego and pride, and it was really good. But, it's like, it's a downfall throughout history, you know? Yeah. So,
well, what other pitfalls do you think there are in somebody trying to achieve greatness? Let's call it that, right? Ego and pride is definitely one of them. What's another?
Oh man, I would say that a pitfall for being great at what you do would be, man, that's a good question. So besides ego and pride, I think getting sucked into your craft and I've suffered from this, getting sucked into your craft where that's all that matters and that becomes your identity.
There you go. Okay.
So for me personally, if you rewound my life 2.5 years ago, getting hit with divorce is what changed a lot of things for me and my perspective, right? And again, circling back to what we just talked about, is I had a choice. I could let that break me, or I could learn from that, right? I want to get through this season and let's learn from it and be better on the backside of it all. But my identity was wrapped up in my craft, right? Without HVAC, you pull HVAC out of my life, who am I?
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. This is all I know. This is all I've ever done. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I had to realize that my identity is not in my craft. This is just what I do. It's not who I am.
There you
know
go.
what I mean? And so, again, that falls back on my faith, right? And who I am and to whom I belong. And so, for me, I'm a child of the King, and that's where it begins and ends with me. You know what I mean? But it took me recognizing that in my own life. I think we live in a world where it's like, it's not okay for men to be vulnerable. It's not okay for men to talk about feelings. You know, I grew up in that, right? It's like, be a man, grow a pair of balls. You know what I mean? And it's just like, I get it. There's something to be said for that, to be tough and resilient, right? But, you know, I've had a lot of things in my life that have happened to me, kind of traumatic events that I sweep under the rug and I keep on going, only to find that 20 years down the road, it comes back to bite me in the butt. And all of this stuff and this trail of damage that I left in my life was all because it stemmed from that. And I never dealt with it, you know? And so knowing what I know now, and I'm not saying go sit on a couch and tell a therapist all your stuff, right? There's different ways for different people. Everybody's different, right? So yeah,
have an outlet, right?
Yeah, for sure. And even if it's just a friend, right? But dude, find a friend who's wiser than you, who's got their life together, who's successful, right? Who can lead you down the right path. You know, self-sabotaging is not a fix, you know?
No,
just
absolutely.
go drink, man. Let's go to the bar. Like, that doesn't fix anything.
No,
you know?
it certainly doesn't. You know, fixes the moment, really,
For sure.
at least for perception wise.
Well, get your mind off of things.
But
doesn't fix the problem.
No, it doesn't. You know, so I'm hearing identity. I really like that because it is really easy for people to get so attached to what it is that they do and mistake it for who they are. It's really interesting. I think another aspect of it is maybe fear. And I say fear because as we achieve success, and I think some people out here who you know listen to this podcast, this may resonate, but I think there's something to be said about reaching levels of success. Okay, so you know, I mean, listen, in my darkest days, I was hosting at a seafood restaurant just so I could eat, right? And that was here. Anything was a step up.
That wasn't your definition of success.
That was not. That was not. But you know what my definition of success was? Being able to actually afford a meal at that same restaurant.
Sure.
Right? So that was my new baseline. I could afford a meal now. Fast forward 15 years, right? And listen, I've been blessed to achieve a ton of success for somebody my age, and it's great. And listen, I've got the pinnacle. I've got the beautiful wife and kids and house and you know all this stuff, awesome business and all of this stuff. But we set new baselines. So now when we talk about fear, right? The fear is no longer the soup, right, that I had to eat when I was a host. The fear is not driving a Ford Raptor. Uh-oh. What if I have to get a Jeep?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
How dare you?
Actually, funny story. I say that because I literally just traded in my Jeep for a Raptor. But you see where I'm going with that, right? We have these new baselines that we set for ourselves as we move through these successes. And I think, again, maybe it boils down to something about identity, or maybe it's that, you know, we're walking a tightrope and we have no idea if we're 6 inches above the ground or 60 feet above the ground. And so we've redefined fear.
Sure.
You know, how does that land with you?
I mean, we're all afraid of something, right? I think for me right now, the biggest thing in my life is that I have a fear of like losing my kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think for any parent that's probably one of the biggest fears, you know, especially in a world we live in with like all the trafficking and everything else, you know?
Yeah.
So that's a constant fear of mine, but I choose to not live in that fear. Right.
There you go. Yes.
And, I mean, I walk around in victory, right? I walk around like when I saw you, when we walked up, right? Hey man, how you doing? Right. And my response every time to every person who ever asks me is, I'm unstoppable. How are you? Right.
Yeah.
And it stops people in their tracks because it's not the knee-jerk reaction that I think we go through life with, just constant knee-jerk, like, hey man, how are you? Oh, I'm good. How are you? It's like, you don't really care how I'm doing. You know what I mean? It's just something that we say, you know? And so it's like, I try to stop and I find myself kind of going back into this sometimes, but I try to stop asking people what they do. Because back to the identity thing, like it doesn't matter what we do, right? A lot of people ask what you do because it becomes this, for lack of a better word, a dick measuring competition, right? Like how much money do you make?
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm asking you what you do so I can kind of judge you and figure out if I make more money than you. And then maybe I have a little bit of higher status than you, right? Subconsciously, that's what's happening, right? But we don't think about all this stuff. And so I try to stop asking people what they do, and I'm more interested in who you are, right? Like, how did you get to where you're at? Tell me that journey. What did you learn along the way, right? What kind of wisdom can I pull from you, right? That I can apply to my own life, that maybe I don't have to go through those heartaches and that divorce and that filing bankruptcy or losing my business or, getting screwed over by a business partner, whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? So I think there's always something to be learned in every conversation from every person. I think when you start asking questions that are meaningless, like, what do you do? It's like, man, you're missing the meat and potatoes of the conversation that could be happening. You know what I mean? You're just on the surface because that's what everybody asks. What do you do? You know?
That's really, really good. And I think I have a suspicion that, for some people who may be introverts or something like that, they use that term so they can establish small talk, right? And get a conversation started because they don't know how to go up to somebody and just say, hey, who are you, man?
Why not just go for the big, nasty question, right? Like, just go for it.
I love it.
Yeah. I think, again, back to like, be a man, grow a pair of balls, right? It's just like, have a pair of balls, dude. Just walk up to somebody and ask, you know what I mean? It's like, you never know what you're going to get if you don't ask for it. And you'd be surprised at what you will get if you just ask for it. I'll be in a restaurant or something and I'll make some wild comment like, oh, don't forget to give me the cool guy discount, or don't forget to give me the good looking guy discount. I'll just say something stupid, right? And it depends on who I'm talking to, right? If it's a female and she looks cute, like I'll make some random comment about me being good looking or something, and it always gets a chuckle out of people. And usually they're like, oh yeah, I'd put an extra 5% off of that or 10% off or whatever, right? And it's like, you just ask for it and it happens. Yeah. And, but if you never ask, it'll never happen, right? So it's like when they talk about sales, like you'll get 0% of like, I don't remember what they say. It's like 0% of the sales that you don't ask for or something of that nature.
Yeah. Man, it's like kindergarten rules again, right? You won't get for anything you don't ask.
100%.
That's amazing. So I want to transition a little bit, and I think our conversation is going to circle back to more of this because this is amazing. And this is hugely valuable for me and my audience. But I want to shift. Speaking of what you do, HVAC Tactical. I'm more curious right now of what your mission is. Why are you doing what you're doing?
I am doing what I'm doing with the Tactical brand because I'm just trying to elevate the trade.
There you go.
So if I can get one person to change their mindset, believe in themselves, try to become a master of what it is that they're doing, right? That change in mindset turns around and then that guy or girl turns around and does it to somebody else. Yeah. That person turns around and does it to somebody else, right? That's just one person. Now, if I could do that to 1,000 people, now all of a sudden you got 1,000 people turning around helping 1,000 people behind them. That turn into another 1,000 people behind them, right? Before you know it, we just have this different mindset in the industry and in the trade, which now all of a sudden our entire trade just elevated.
Yeah.
And as we elevate the trade, a lot of amazing things begin to happen, right? We bring more value to who it is we are and what it is we do. And now clients value our skills, right? Value our industry. OEMs start to value the technicians more in the trenches, right? Mm-hmm. OEMs, man, have like kind of run circles all over, right? The trades. Yep. And they've become these behemoth corporations and they just do whatever they want to do. You know what I mean? And quite honestly, they've helped lobby all the laws and stuff that come down the pipeline, right? It's like we as tradesmen and tradeswomen, like we need to have more of a say. We need to have more of a presence in all that stuff, right? And how you do that? Well, you change the mindset first, right? Then you become try to become a master of what it is you're doing. You get involved, you get on committees, right? You start helping make these decisions, and you start taking some power back.
Yeah, So you saying you want to change the mindset. What needs to be changed and why?
I think first and foremost is valuing who you are.
Okay, you notice that as an issue in our
100%.
Industry.
Yeah.
Okay, why do you think that is?
Because we've allowed other people to devalue us for so long. It's like you telling somebody they're ugly, right? If at some point they begin to believe they're ugly, right? You keep telling somebody they're stupid. At some point they begin to believe that they're stupid, right? You keep building somebody up. Man, you're great. You're doing a great job. Man, that video was killer. Man, that podcast was amazing, right? All of a sudden it's like everything starts getting better because you're believing in yourself now, right? So you tell somebody, whether it's a lie or whether it's a truth, you tell somebody something enough times, it becomes a truth to them. So good or bad, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think it's a huge problem. I think customers in general like have devalued what we do for a living. And if they didn't, they wouldn't be haggle with us and expect us to drop $3,000 off of our price before we walk out the door, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I'm just like, I don't know what kind of game you play with other people, but I don't play that game. You know what I mean? Like my price is my price. And well, I'll just call you back in November and I'll get a better, my price doesn't change in November. Right. My prices stay the same all year round, you know? And I mean, there's just a lot of different, things like that. And I think valuing yourself is really where it starts, right? Yeah. You are something special. You are not just a nobody.
That's we're so aligned on this, man. It's almost unbelievable, and I bring it back because I touch on this in the book as well. We talk a lot about college and, things like that and kind of the misconceptions, misperceptions that revolve around having a college degree, a college education, and I compare it obviously to, people in the trades, all trades, HVAC and masonry and construction and kitchen equipment, whatever it may be. But it seems like this is a product of something that happened in the 80s, and I call this the swing of the pendulum, right? Because the blue-collar skilled trades were honored and revered for a long time. Yep. Because that's how you earned, that's how you provided, that's how you made a living, that's how you took care of your family, right? And then, in the 80s, college came around, and to their credit, to college's credit, they marketed the shit out of that, right? And basically they told everybody, college education is the way to go. We're making it more and more affordable, which is a whole nother conversation in itself today, right? But this is the narrative that was pushed. So everybody and their mother started to get college degrees, right? And suddenly you were the outcast if you worked a trade. So here's the swinging of the pendulum, right? And so now, circle 30 years later, pendulum's all the way in the other direction. Now you're only valued if you have a college degree. If you look at somebody and they say, "Hey, what are you going to school for?" You say, "Well, I'm not going to school. I'm an HVAC tech." You've seen the looks, you've felt the looks, right? So that's what you're talking about. Yeah.
And I think for the last 20, 30, 40 years, you're right. People have looked down upon blue collar trades. Mm-hmm. I think COVID really helped change that perspective. People spending all the time in their home realizing like, hey man, we really actually need these people. Like, what do you mean we're locking down everybody? Like my AC's broken. I need somebody to come here. I got a leaking pipe. I need somebody here now. Right. Yeah. So I think COVID really helped shine that light. And I think there was already kind of a push kind of before that, but then COVID like just slingshot it forward.
Yeah.
And then we just been riding that wave. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Not only that, I don't want to interrupt, but not only that, right? Did it shed light on the blue collar part of it, but everybody who was in college now had to start studying online. And then they were like, wait a second, I'm paying $100,000 to do what I could do on YouTube.
Yeah.
What is that about?
Yeah. And I think too, you're left with, white collar guys today, look at blue collar guys and still have that kind of condescending kind of attitude, right? Mm-hmm. When in reality it's like the blue collar guy probably makes more than you do,
and probably a little more capable, probably a little,
Dude, there's something to be said for like being able to grab a drill out of your tool bag or a pair of tools or a set of tools out of your tool bag and go do whatever it is you need to do in your house, right? Yep. I don't need to call somebody to come do this stuff. And so I think being capable in a skill like HVAC allows you to really have the skills of multiple trades in one.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Whereas if you're a bricklayer, like, bricklaying, mm-hmm. right? If you're a landscaper, landscaping, right? If you're a carpenter, you do carpentry work. But if you're an HVAC guy, man, you're a plumber, you're a carpenter, you're a roofer, like
electrician,
yeah. Like you can do all of these different things, and then it's just a matter of like, how deep do you want to go? You've got the basics of electrical, but do you want to go further than that? Right. Like I'm building I'm getting ready to do paint right now. I'm building a brand new podcast studio and stuff. And I did all the electrical in that place. And,
nice.
It's funny. My mom's like, are you sure that? I'm like, Mom, back up. I got this.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's a lot of outlets, Mom. I know the code. It's fine. It's going to be fine. So, Yeah, I mean, blue collar is for me is the way to go, right? I'm not going to knock white collar jobs. We still need them, right? But never in history has white collar jobs ever been so threatened by AI.
Oh yeah.
You know, whereas you're not going to replace what guys like me and you do.
Oh, not at all.
So
you can't.
No.
I mean, and here's actually that's a good topic for conversation as well. Here's where I see that going, right? And number one, it's not going to happen for a very, very long time because you're talking about full replacements. You're not talking about upgrades.
Right.
You can't upgrade the current equipment to recognize AI. It's not going to happen, you know? So, but when they start replacing equipment with AI that already has it built in, it's going to be diagnostic only. AI can't change a TXV. Yep. AI can't replace a compressor.
And I'll give you some really good examples of AI in our space right now. There's a company, I've been talking to this guy for a while. His name's Charlie. He's with a company called Free to Grow, I think it's called. He has an AI answering service. You call this AI, like you call this company, call your company after hours, right? And AI answers the phone, and it's really hard to tell. Like, if you're younger than me, you probably would recognize that you're talking to an AI. But if you're probably my age or older, you probably wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
And I was listening to couple different calls. Like, I'm like, Charlie, how good is this really? You know what I mean? And I'm listening to some of these calls, and like this lady from like Arkansas, real thick Southern draw, right? And she's like not the average, like, please, I got sick kids and I got running water on the underside of the house. Like, I need help right away. And the AI was like pivoting to answer these questions like it was a real person. And I was blown away. I'm like, whoa, dude, like, this is not a cut and dry, yes, we'll call you right back, right? And she's like, I understand, I'm here to help. You know, I'm going to get a technician to call you back soon. I just couldn't believe it, man.
That's amazing. So it's, you know, we've actually started to implement AI actively in my organization as well. You're familiar with XOI?
No.
Okay, so XOI is an incredible. I'm surprised they're big in the HVAC space, but XOI has been around for quite some time now. But basically, it's a platform that allows you to utilize pictures and videos, but you know it puts it into link form, so you're not trying to attach it to emails needlessly and stuff. And then it's got workflows. You the tech can walk through workflows based on customer, based on equipment, based on all these different things. So it kind of guides them through a process, right? My techs absolutely love it for multiple reasons. But point is, not long ago, they just released their AI summaries. So, you know, my techs love to fix equipment. I love to fix equipment. I hate writing notes. They hate writing notes. That's not what they're put on this earth to do. Yeah. They're put on this earth to work with their hands, right? And so this program we've designed and developed and honed in on this new skill that they provided it, where now the workflows have it's yes or no questions. There's some free form questions, but I don't know. I think there's like 10 questions or something like that. Really easy, because my thing is simplicity in the field, right? That's what I'm after, is simplicity in the field. Keep the techs in their zone of genius. And so they fill out all the information, right? And then they hit OK, and it takes all that information and it puts it into a beautiful AI summary. Today, I arrived on site and checked in with so-and-so. I was here to look at the X, Y, and Z piece of equipment. Here's what I found. Bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. Unit is working upon, departure. Thank you so much for choosing Windy City Equipment, etc. So it builds this AI summary for them every single time they complete a call, right? And I've got 45 techs on the road. XOI. And so so what it's done is it just leveled the playing field. Every single one of my technicians has the most beautiful notes, and they love it. They love it because it's so succinct, accurate, and gets across exactly what they need to. And then let's not even talk about from a customer perspective, right? Sure. So from when we talk about AI never replacing the equipment, no, but AI is going to be an incredible tool in the blue collar space if people know how to use it.
Yeah, and it's popping up everywhere. I mean, even on social content creation, AI tools, you can upload a 20-minute video and it pops out 10 different reels for you, all based on topic, scripts it out, like writes everything, like transcripts it out, and then it gives you an overall this reel is like A plus. It should generate X amount of hits, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, what the heck, dude? Like AI is incredible in any space, right? In any industry. But yeah, it's only getting better in the HVAC space for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it will never replace us.
No. And you know what? I mean, let's take this back. You know, one of the things that AI lacks is the ability to think critically, right? I mean, AI doesn't have the mindset that that you do, that I do, that, you know, we're trying to hone in on our people.
Well, from like an answering service aspect, right? Like AI will never have a bad day.
There you go.
Right? Never give a customer attitude.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
it's not, didn't wake up late and get to work late. Like, this is why, you know, you wonder why, like, you can complain that these things are taking people's jobs, but at the end of the day, like, I get it. We're all human and we all have lives. Right. But this is what happens when you try to do the bare minimum in your job. Right. And you don't care. And it's just a job and you're not passionate about it.
That's right.
And it all boils back down to, you know, there are consequences for how you do your job, how you live your life, right? How you do certain things. If I'm dealing with an employee who's not doing his job, not acting right, I'm either going to fire him or find an alternative way to replace him, right? So I got to get the work done one way or another. But if I can do it with somebody who's not going to complain, is going to show up every day and not give my customers attitude, and, you know.
Speaking of which, have you noticed this seismic shift in like customer service lately? I don't know if it's just me or not, but I feel like this stuff is getting more and more prevalent where people just don't give a shit, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Is that just me?
No, it's there for sure. I think some of that comes with frustration in our industry, right? Where you basically have you have guys who are dealing with customers, and customers are just like, again, not valuing who you are. So you're just like, look, here's my price. Either you take it or you leave it. Right. Yeah. Number one, that's bad business. Like, you got to treat people with respect. And like in sales, rule number one is people buy from people they like. Right. And so, like, just be likable. It's not that difficult, you know, but if you don't like people, this is the wrong business to be in. Like, this is a service-based business. 100%. And one of the things I love about this business is the fact that it is a service-based business, because I think as a human being, one of the greatest things in life that you can possibly ever do is serve other people, you know?
Yep.
And in this business, you do that every day. So, and you can do it with a smile on your face, or you can do it pissed off, you know?
So. Let's talk about that for a second, because this is intriguing to me. I don't know if you know this. I don't know if we talked about this, but at the beginning of the year, the Blues and White brand released an online academy for soft skills for frontline blue collar workers, technicians, right? And what something you just said reminded me of the importance of, and I'd love to get your perspective on this show. You know, you said all you have to do is be likable. Right. And because there's this push and pull with that. People are like, well, you know, being likable just means that I'm a doormat, you know, and I'm not going to let people be a doormat. I'm not a people pleaser. And, you know, I don't give a shit what people think. That's the big thing, right? I don't care what other people think. And there's a difference between not caring or being able to brush off negative comments or things like that, right? There's a big difference between that and like somebody who's signing your paychecks, number one, and you know, somebody who you're serving, to your point, number two, right?
I think you're either professional or you're not. You know what I mean? I had a friend tell me the other day, she made some comment at work, and her boss looked at her and was like, you know, after all these years of working with you, I just realized, like, you're kind of mean, you know? and she looked back at him. She goes, oh, I can be very mean. She goes, he goes, I thought you were always just like a super nice person. And she goes, oh, no, I'm kind. Nice people are fake, you know? And I was like, I have never heard anybody put it that way, but it's so true, you know? Yeah. I think there's something to be said for being kind to people, right? But sometimes when people are just nasty to you, man, it's like you have a choice, right? You can bite back, you can walk away, you know, you can spin it and use it in your favor. Like, it's all a matter of your personality, right? Like in my career, going through sales, it's quite the airplane. In my career, going through sales, you kind of have a couple different choices, right? And for me, it's like I want to educate more than I want to try to sell.
Sure.
And I try to find common ground. And I say things to clients that the average person sitting, if you could listen into some of my sales pitches, you'd be like, dude, you said that to that guy, you know? And I'm like, yeah, because that's my personality, right?
Yeah.
Like I can poke fun at somebody at a kitchen table or on a job site and as a homeowner, right? And I'll get them to laugh. Yeah. And laughter is like a universal language. Like if you can get somebody to laugh, the walls come down, right? Yeah. And now you're not just a sales guy, right? Or a technician trying to sell something. It becomes like you're just one of the guys, you know what I mean? Hey man, I'm just here to help you. Whether you buy something or not, it doesn't matter to me. Like my job is just to help, you know, and create a solution for you. But I think especially a lot of these VC companies, I'm not saying every VC, you know, but a lot of these companies that are being bought out, it's like their number one objective is drive revenue, right? And you have to drive revenue in every business, but like at what expense, at what degree, right? And I think that's really a dangerous thing, and it's actually giving a lot of people bad taste in their mouth for our industry, for sure.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know what the long-term game of this whole thing looks like, but you know, I just feel like there's just something to be said for just being genuine, being authentic with people, being kind to people, you know, truly caring about providing a service for them and a value-driven proposition, and not just hey man, I'm just here to sell a $20,000 air conditioner and then I'm out. And then I don't care what happens after that. Like that's a terrible attitude to have, you know? It's like, just leave the industry, dude. If that's how you operate, you know, like our industry would be better without you.
Right.
You know,
that's a good way to put it. And, you know, too often we find those people who were either forced into a trade or they do it because they think they can't do anything else. And then they adopt those exact attitudes. They're very spiteful, you know, and they can be. You know, and unfortunately, the effort that it takes to turn those people around, it's usually too much, man.
Well, you said it earlier that technicians want to fix things, right?
Yeah.
So there's a handful of companies that I know of right now that are switching the model of their business to the car dealership model or the mechanic model. And what that is basically the service technician has very little interaction with the homeowner. And so what they do is they show up on the job site, introduce themselves, they go figure out what's going on. They relay that information back to their office, to their service advisor. The service advisor then contacts the homeowner and they deal with that communication. And what that does is it allows the technician to not have to give quotas of how to upsell stuff and, you know, collect this money while you're there, and make sure that you talk about a new system while you're there, John. You know what I mean? And it's like, technicians don't want to do that.
Right.
Technicians just want to show up and fix stuff like it used to be, right? Yeah. And now it's all about trying to upsell. It's all about trying to get this old unit that's only 5 years old out of here, and we're going to put a brand new unit in, you know? And so this eliminates that whole thing. The service advisor deals with the homeowner, and the service advisor can handle all the upselling stuff. The technician just gets the yes or no, whether we're fixing this unit or not, you know? And so, it's an interesting model for sure. But think about when you take your car to the mechanic, you don't talk to the mechanic. Mm-mm. You talk to the service advisor at the front desk. They relay all the information to the mechanic. The mechanic comes back and says, you need, this was fixed, but you also recommend, we recommend that you do this, right?
Yeah.
And it's always a bunch of stuff. But then it's not the mechanic who tries to sell you, the owner, of, well, you need a brake job, you need a brake fluid flush and all this other stuff. It's the service advisor that handles all of that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think I understand that point. I think I'd feel differently if the mechanic came to my home.
Maybe.
But, you know, I wonder, first off, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, on that model?
Part of me goes, man, I like it, right? Because it allows a tech to be a tech.
Yeah.
You know? And I think all this pressure that we've put on technicians to like, hey, man, you're in sales training this morning for 2 hours before you head out to your first call. Like, I need you to sell more units. You know, I don't know, man. I feel like I think the scary part is that people are selling things for the sake of selling things, you know? And I don't like that.
No, I don't like that either. I don't think anybody likes that. What about, is there something to be said about transitioning that sales conversation from a technician to strictly a customer service conversation? And then you have your representative or whatever, your salesperson, right? Have that conversation, but you don't completely eliminate the interaction between the technician and the customer, but you tailor that conversation to more of kind of what you said. See if you can get them to laugh.
Yeah, I think for me, like I'm 42 years old. And so I get the old school mixed with the new school. I think that's what makes me who I am, right?
Sure.
Like I get this mixture of both where I'm not sold on like 100% technology, but I'm not set in all the old ways either. Right?
Yeah.
So I can kind of toggle back and forth. And I think that there's something to be said for just, again, being kind, befriending the client, right? Educating the client. And then the client turns around and goes, well, man, what do you think I should do? Right? Dude, there you go. I mean,
there it is.
There it is. You know what I mean? It's just like when you can get the customer to ask you what you think that they should do, like they're obviously trusting you to make that decision for them, right? Then it's just a matter of, can you build enough value in this $10,000 unit, $20,000, whatever it is you're trying to sell them? Can you build enough value to make them say yes, or to get them to say yes? And for me, man, I just always tell everybody when I would walk into a sales call, I'd say, look, straight up, first and foremost, I can fix anything, right? But the question is should I?
Right.
That's not my decision to make. That's your decision to make. And my goal today is to leave you with enough information for you to be able to make that decision. And then you go from there.
Yeah.
And I've sold a lot of units because of that. You know what I mean? But if they just decided they wanted to go ahead and just replace the compressor or the condenser or whatever, that's on them. If they made a bad decision, I mean, here's where the rubber meets the road. You're about to find out if they're a good $10,000 decision maker.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, no, that's a great perspective. I appreciate you sharing that. That's really good. So I want to kind of we're going to transition. We're going to shift lanes a lot during this conversation, man.
Just use the blinker.
That's just how we operate, because we like to cover as much as possible. And you're a wealth of knowledge, so I got to maximize this time.
Appreciate that.
So I want to switch back to the mindset thing just a little bit, okay? Because you said something that was I don't remember exactly what it was you said, but you said basically there's a lot of people in this industry that don't value themselves or what they do, right? They maybe they think they're stupid. What I see a lot, I do some coaching and things like that, specifically for blue collar professionals who, may start to feel this way. Some of them are stuck in ruts, right? I want something more, but I don't know what that is, right? And so we're kind of going all the way back to the start of this conversation a little bit, and I'm curious what you would say to somebody in the industry that wants to achieve that success, but maybe they're stuck and they don't know how to get out, and they don't know what steps to take to get there.
I would say first and foremost, put your pride aside and ask for help.
Yeah.
So no matter what it is you're going through, whether it's in this business or just in life in general, somebody else has already been there. Somebody else has figured it out, right? They've punched the formula. They wrote it down. There's a blueprint for it somewhere. You just have to ask, right? They could ask you. They could ask Matt Murray. I don't know if you know who Matt Murray is, Blue Collar King. He runs a super successful business. Angel Hernandez out of Fresno, California, runs a super successful business. John Shamahorn out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, super successful business. Like they're everywhere, right? It's just a matter of getting plugged in. And if you don't know these people, you don't know somebody who's run a successful business or been through these problems that you're trying to hurdle, somebody knows somebody.
Yeah.
Like this is where networking really really plays this major role, right? But if you're just going to work and going home and sitting on the couch and watching TV, that doesn't fix your problems. Number one, you have to realize that you have a problem, right? Number two is you have to be willing to say, I really want to fix this problem. And then number three is, well, how do I fix this problem, right? And that's getting plugged in, man. Yeah. If you're not plugged into like the HVAC community, like even on like Instagram, Facebook, I mean, Facebook's pretty toxic, but nonetheless, if you're on Instagram, you can ask a question and you'll get a dozen people that'll be like, this is how I deal with that, right? As opposed to like on Facebook, they'll be like, that's the stupidest question I've ever heard. Like, you're an idiot. You should leave the business. Like, you have no business here. It's like, there's, again, people who are doing greater than you they want to help you, right? People who are doing less than you are people who are going to try to bring you back down to their level. Yeah, no, that's great. And that's what people mean when they say that your network is your net worth, right? Because it truly is, because it allows you to learn, and allows you to kind of take advantage of what other people know that you don't. Surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. Yes. Like, you are the sum of your 5 closest friends. I love that. I want to talk about that for a second, because I have a view, and I've heard this everywhere. It's in every book you read. It's online. It's, and there's so much merit to it, Ben. There really is, right? Because at the heart of it, it's, surround yourself with people that can help you be better. Yeah.
right? And to switch
Not
perspective,
to be confused with what can you do for me?
precisely,
Yeah.
not to be confused with what can you do for me. The flip side though is the perspective of those people, right? Why should they hang out with you?
Oh, you don't want to hang out with me.
No. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? From that perspective is if you are the lesser of, I'm going to call lesser. It sounds like a bad term. I think there's probably a better one. But if you're,
I think I know what you're asking. I think that other people tend to see the greatness in other people, right?
Yes.
So like if I'm bringing up this apprentice, right? I see the potential and the greatness that this individual holds, right? And I want to help mold that because it's going to not just benefit me in the future, but it's also going to benefit the industry in the future, right? It's going to benefit clients in the future. And he's going to be able to pass that knowledge on to a third person, right? So now my impact is not just with him. My impact is almost generational, right? And that's not just dealing with kids, right? That's just dealing with other people in general. So you'd be surprised at the impact that you can have on someone's life by saying one kind thing to them. Mm-hmm. You never know. And that's why I walk around and even if it's a dude, and some people will bash me for this or whatever, but I'll be like, dude, I freaking love that jacket. You know what I mean? And that conversation starts, oh man, cool, thanks, I got it from this. Yeah, man, it would just start the conversation. Who knows where the conversation goes, right? Yeah. And next thing you know, it's just like, man, I'm glad I met this guy. And now 2 years later, this guy's in my circle and, he's a mentor of mine or I'm a mentor of his, whatever. Right. Like you just never know how something so small can change your life and change their life, Yeah. Somebody could be on the verge of suicide that day and you walk by and just go, man, I just want to tell you, man, that, I think you're beautiful, and thank you so much. Like they don't hear that, Yeah. And I compliment a lot of people, a lot of places. It just depends on what it is. Obviously, I'm not going to tell a dude he's beautiful, right? Like, that would be weird. But yeah, plenty of times I'll walk up to just a random girl, right? And again, there's no agenda. There's no like, hey, let me get your phone number after the fact. It's right. I pay the compliment and I walk away. You know what I mean? And you just never know how it changes people's lives. And in those moments, I've had some really cool conversations. Just be like, thank you so much. Like I really needed that today. You just never know. You just never know. So being kind to people, I think, is really number one. But your influence can change other people's lives and other people's influence can change your life. But if you're just sitting on the couch doing nothing is going to change, right? I literally just made a post the other day and it said, what you are not changing, you are choosing, and it's true. Yeah. Obviously there's some circumstances, again, sicknesses and stuff like that you can't control. Right. But you can still choose on how you deal with it. So.
Yeah. No, that's great. And that's kind of what I was asking, right? With the, with the circle and finding those people. And so kind of what I took away from that is it's not what you know, it's who you are, right? People will pick up on who you are. They won't know what you don't know. You won't know what you don't know. But you know who you are, yep. and that shines through most of the time. So, the people who see that in you and that greatness in you, will adopt you into that circle. But you got to go out there and get it
for sure.
You got to ask
for sure. Well, like how many influential people have you not so much encountered, but have bounced ideas and asked advice for your podcast stuff?
Oh my gosh, almost 200. I mean, that's a perfect example, right? And it's anyway, yeah, no, that's I could stare off and ponder. So this is a big thing that I do, right? Is I'll get something in my head and I will just go into my own world and think about it for like an hour. So I gotta actively not do that on podcasts when I hear really great advice. So if I just start to stare off into the distance. It's not you, it's me.
Right? I hear that a lot.
But I do love that, man. The paying the compliments thing. My wife is great at that, and I've tried to get better as a result, following her lead and her example. She's the type of person where, somebody's tag will be sticking out at Target and she'll walk up behind them and tuck their tag in and say, hey, your tag was just sticking out. You know what I mean? But it speaks to exactly what you're saying, and because you never know what you can do for somebody. Right. And all, if I'm bringing it all the way back, right. And I'm hearing what you're saying now and relating it to your superpower, right. Your superpower being able to motivate people, inspire people, at the heart of it, there's this kindness and there's this intent of valuing others, just the same as you would value anyone else, right. As you would value yourself. One of the best quotes I ever heard on the difference between good and evil is if you use people as ends to means, or if people are the means, right? And what I'm hearing from you is that people are the means. I mean, that's at the heart of everything we're talking about.
You got to put
today.
people first.
Exactly.
Yeah, everything else is fleeting, right? Everything else passes away, right? It's people who ultimately matter. And unfortunately, we live in a world right now where everything is like so divisive, right? And it's red versus blue, Republican versus Democrat, right? And it's like, I just was in a conversation last night and this 20-year-old girl was just dumber than a bucket of rocks. And I'm just like, I just looked at her and I was like, man, I'm not trying to be mean at all, but like, you really need to go educate yourself. And her response to me was, I am educated. Okay. That was the end of the conversation for me. It's like, it's so challenging, man. You can't challenge people's core belief in a combative way, because all it does is the walls go up, right? Yeah. Like, you have to, at some level, like, break down the walls and become a friend. And it's like, it's just so hard. I've kind of made a decision that if you are opposite of what I think politically, like, I just don't want to have this conversation, because there's literally nothing that I can say that is going to change your mind. And all it does is end with frustration, and on both sides, and it just makes me realize like how ignorant people are, and they don't want to do their own research, and it's super challenging. And, but at the end of the day, they're still a person, they're still a human being. Right. And I have to be like, man, I feel bad that they've been so duped by the system, and they just believe anything that they want to hear. And I think because it's a world of convenience that we live in, right? Like, people just want to hear something and then just repeat it. They don't really want to look into things for themselves.
I think it's a world of confusion, man. I think
the spirit of deception is real.
So much information getting thrown around these days, and it is,
majority of it's not true.
The majority of it is not true, right? But it's really easy to believe the masses. If the masses start
well, and then you get condemned, right, and blackballed if you don't believe lies. So that's a whole nother. Yeah,
we won't go too deep down that road, although I'm sure we could. But something I do want to pick out of that a little bit is, I try to live by the phrase, seek first to understand, then to be understood, right? Because I'm a firm believer that, if you try to get people to understand your perspective before understanding theirs, and, you have to take this stance because not everybody will. But if you can effectively do that, you have a greater chance of getting somebody to value and respect your opinion to the point where they may be able to adopt some of it into their own life. But if you attack these situations like, hey, listen to me, which I've done for several years.
Because I know what I'm talking about.
Right. And I did this for way too long, Ben, because that was like, and I did it out of a good place, right? It was like, hey, listen, I want to help you. Listen to me. I want to help you. But it never worked. It never worked.
I find a lot of people don't want to be helped.
No, there's a lot of truth to that too.
So it's like anything, right? Like trying to be a master of your craft. If you don't want to be, there's nothing anybody's going to do to convince you otherwise. That's right? So you're just going to keep going home and getting on social media and watching Netflix and chilling and waiting to buy the next biggest TV and the next iPhone that comes out. That's your life, But man, there's just so much more to life, so much more. Yeah. And but man, you got to get your head out of the freaking phone, right? Yeah. Look up. Don't forsake the journey. right? Like, yes, you want to think of things long term, but don't forsake the journey that you're in right now. Like, dude, pick your head up, look around. Like, there's amazing things around you. There's amazing people around you, you know? And so many people want to help you. But if you're just closed-minded and closed off to that, you're just going to be stuck in the same spot that you're in, you know? So I just try to surround myself with people who are smarter than me, people who are better at things than me, and people that I look up to and that I have a tremendous amount of respect for, you know? And then I go to them and I go, hey man, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? Because this guy's run a $20 million a year company, right? Well, I wouldn't do that. Why? Right? Well, because of this. But why? Like, if you keep asking the why question, it actually gets down to eventually finds the root. Yeah. Right.
It can be hard to do for some people, but you're right. If you keep asking that question in the right and respectful way, you know, you can get to the root of exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah. I had a guy ask me a question one time and it was pertaining to a relationship. And he's just, but why? And I was like, because I don't want to. He's like, but why? And I kept going. And then finally I was like, because I'm not ready to make that decision. He goes, that's an honest answer. And I was like, whoa, this guy just Jedi mind tricked me.
It is amazing because I think that, you know, we try to put up, we've got guardrails in place, 100%. You know, and so we need people like that to kind of rip those down every once in a while. You know, I try to use that as a compass, right? How would I want somebody to treat me if I was, you know, reacting in this way? Yeah. And then I in turn project that onto them. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Well, again, it takes, a tremendous amount of humility, right? Because it's easy to get frustrated with somebody and think like, dude, you're an idiot. I can't believe you would think that way. You know? Yeah. It's like, you have to keep your cool. You have to think like a chess master, right? 10 moves, 15 moves ahead and guide that conversation in a very loving and polite way. Yeah. Condemning people and beating people up for things that they believe and their thought process and how they were raised, right? Because we're all a product of our raising. That doesn't get you anywhere. No. Doesn't get you anywhere with them, you know? So all it does is leave a bad taste in their mouth for them. And the next person that they, hey man, do you know that guy? Oh, dude, I hate that guy. You know, all he did was say this to me and this and that. And so, yeah, it's challenging navigating people. Like, people are an interesting thing.
Yeah, people are the most interesting thing, you know, but I think that's what makes the journey so fun. I want to relate this a little bit to entrepreneurship, right? I'm catching on, much of what we're talking about can relate to leadership.
For sure.
And there's a lot of listeners of this podcast who are leaders within their organization. Some are owners, some are executives, some are just managers, you know, working their way up. And some of them are leaders on the front line as well, right? And to me, leadership is not about a title, it's about influence. It's about who you can influence. And I also believe that everybody in one way, shape, or form is a leader. If you have anybody looking up to you or to you in any capacity, you know, you are a leader, right? Whether that's a coworker, whether that's a boss, whether that's a spouse, a kid, a dog, it doesn't matter, you know? And so, but if more people understood that, I believe that, you know, the industry and the people in it could carry itself in a much different way. So, you know, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, we definitely need leaders, right? No, in any industry.
Sure.
I don't really consider myself to be a leader, but people tell me all the time that I am.
Most leaders don't.
People say a lot of crazy things, and that I've done this or I've done that, and I'm like, dude, I'm just a regular dude. You know what I mean? I realize that I'm not average the way that I think. I realize that. And I think that's kind of what makes me a little bit unique in a sense, but I'm not the only guy that thinks this way either. So, I mean, being a leader is intentional, right? It's focusing your efforts on other people rather than just yourself. And again, back to in the previous conversation, it's about other people. I think all leaders look at other people as like they are the product, if you will, right? Like they are what's important, and building these people up and then creating, you know, your processes and your procedures that help manage these people, right? But growing people and getting people to elevate in their lives, whether that be financially, whether it be spiritually, right? Emotionally, intellectually, whatever the case may be. Great leadership does those things. Great leadership holds those characteristics. So if you consider yourself to be a leader and you're not helping people grow, are you really leading? Mm-hmm. You know, that would be my question. And so, I think that growth in people is kind of like the outcome of great leadership.
No, that's really well put. Are leaders born or made?
That's a great question. I think some people have a natural ability to lead, but like any skill, it has to be honed.
Yeah. Right.
And so you don't get a Dave Ramsey because he was great at math in 5th grade, right? Like the Dave Ramsey thing is he became Dave Ramsey because he was constantly going. Think about how many times Dave Ramsey has failed, right? And so he just didn't give up. He was persistent. He just kept picking up the pieces, learning from that, and kept on going, right? And that's just one of many, many people. But I would say there is a natural ability to leaders, but a majority of it is honed. So I think the natural part of it is probably like that desire to want to help people.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think the desire is a natural thing. I think that's a God-given thing. And everything else is a learned trait. So
what would you say to somebody who wanted to start a business but didn't have a knack? Look at you knew exactly what I was going to say. You know, that's a loaded question for some people.
Yeah.
You know that because there's entrepreneurship's on this pedestal today, and everybody wants to be a business owner, but so few people want to admit that they don't want to serve people.
So I think it's a matter of learning yourself, knowing who you are before you jump into any venture, right? We all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses. And I think that for me personally, like people look at me and they, again, give me all kinds of titles and this and that, right? But at the end of the day, like I'm not a business guy. I don't care to be a business guy. I'm an idea guy. Yeah. I'm just like a creative guy. And so I like to come up with really cool ideas that are outside of the box and like, how are we going to make this work? And then I figure out a way to make it work and I get it off the ground. And then I'm like, okay, cool. This is up and running. So who's taking this? Right. and a lot of times that's how I feel. Like that's how I feel with the magazine. That's how I feel with the award show. That's how I feel with the brand in general. You know, it's like, I got this thing off of the ground, but man, I need people to come on board and help me with this, because like I have other things that I want to do still involved in the HVAC trade. Right. But like, I can't do all of this by myself, and I think you have to know what your strengths are. And then, there's nothing wrong with starting a business, but dude, if you don't have any experience in a business, like just because you're an incredible technician doesn't mean you're going to be an incredible business owner, right? You can be the best installer in the country, but it doesn't mean you're going to be great at running a business, right?
I've seen too many.
Some of the most successful businesses, HVAC businesses in America, are run by people who know nothing about HVAC.
Yep.
Because they hire people who are great at what they do, right?
Yeah.
Greg Reed, he's an author. I don't know if you know who he is or not.
Name sounds familiar. Yeah, what do you write?
Great guy. I'm trying to think of what the name of his books, but he's also a keynote speaker, and he's also he's doing a lot of stuff for the Napoleon Hill Foundation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he does an event every year called The Secret Knock. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No.
Yeah, it's invitation only. It's pretty cool, but you should check it out. Anyways,
I will.
He made a comment to his son about, son, you need to work your strengths and hire your weaknesses, right? So his son, he caught his son hiring somebody to clean his bedroom or something like that. And he's like, son, I told you to clean your bedroom. Why is that other person cleaning? He goes, well, Dad, you told me to hire my weaknesses and work my strengths. And it's amazing. It's like, I can't be mad. I can't be mad at that, And so it's just that phrase is just really could be like never more true. You have to know what you're good at.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what you want to focus on. Focus on what you're good at and what you're passionate about. Find other people who are better at the things than you are of the things that you don't want to do or you're not good at. And then hire that out. Right. And if you're going to start a business, like you don't want to be 20 years into a business still in the truck. Maybe you do. Right. My friend Angel Hernandez out of Fresno, California, it's like $20-25 million a year operation. He's still in a truck running service calls.
Yeah.
Because he wants to.
Yeah.
Not because he has to. and there's something respectable about that.
Yeah.
He knows what he loves and he gets to do what he loves every day.
Yeah.
So he could stay home if he wanted. He's got his business pretty much runs itself, but it's like anything. You have to just know who you are, what you want to do, and then go from there.
That's really amazing advice. I hope my audience is taking notes out there. And my dad operates largely the same way. Like he could still, every once in a while, he'll go out in the field. He'll do an install. He'll do, something like that. Now me, I'm a little bit of the other side of the spectrum, right? I spent 10 years in the field and, because I love fixing things, but my passion lies with building business.
Sure.
Building business. And that requires, unfortunately, a lot of travel, a lot of office work, a lot of leadership conversations, a lot of building of the teams. And, so I don't get the opportunity to go back out in the field as much. And, and I don't really want to. I mean, every once in a while, I love it. I still remember the feeling of when I was in the field and being able to fix those fryers, right? And going in with something completely broken in a family business on a Friday night, and them saying, please help me. And me saying, no problem, I got your back. Just give me a little bit, and walking out and getting their oven up and running or getting their fryer up and running, right? Maybe it's a family place and it was a family pizza place and their oven was down, and those 1,000 thank yous that I got on the way out are why I did everything, right? That really drove me. And I always thought, well, if I can do this one at a time, being in the field and fixing this equipment, what can I do if I focus all my efforts on building the business? How many of those thank yous can I get then?
Right.
And so you really, to your point, you've got to know yourself and you've got to, the business needs to serve you too. At the end of the day, the business is built to serve, but so many people get handcuffed to it.
Yeah.
They see it as this 800-pound gorilla, right? That they can't get away from. They even use it as an excuse not to spend time with their family or, enjoy the journey or
it
do anything.
Becomes your identity.
It becomes your identity. Exactly. But if you can step out of yourself for a second, take a bird's eye view, that business can be used to serve you. And that's what I want my audience to take away from what I'm saying right now is that, if you're at a point in your business where you feel like you can't get out, are you being honest with yourself, number one? And number two, what the hell are you doing about it?
Yeah, I think one of the things that really helped me, and I know this is going to sound really weird, but I would challenge anybody listening to this to do this. I think it reveals a lot about who you are. Nobody knows you like you, right? And so my advice would be stare at yourself in the mirror, like up close and personal in the mirror, eye to eye, and tell yourself to get your crap together and tell yourself what your problem is because you know you better than anybody else. So imagine if your best friend came to you and go, dude, get your freaking crap together. Stop cheating on your wife. Stop cheating on your taxes. Stop whatever the case may be, right?
Yep.
Be honest and open with yourself. Tell yourself this, right? And you may think, well, what is that going to do? Because it's verbal. It's coming out of your mouth to yourself, right? Yeah. Now all of a sudden there's like a depth that comes with this that you're just like, whoa, dude, like that sounded so different when I'm telling it to myself, not in my head, but out of my mouth, right? Yeah. And for me, it was like, staring at myself in the mirror, telling myself to get my crap together, right? Stop being so lazy. Because if I'm 100% honest with myself, I go, man, am I performing at 100%? If I could put an actual number on it and just be real with myself, and I go, man, I'm operating at 30%, 35%. Mm-hmm. I could deliver so much more, right? Mm-hmm. But I get into a rut and I get lazy and I'm tired, right? It's an excuse. And I get it. We're all tired. You know what I mean? Like, I drove 12 hours today. Like, look at the bags under my eyes, you know? But I think if you're just really open and honest with yourself, I think there's a lot that can be revealed and you don't need to go sit on a couch and talk to a therapist. Just be open and honest with yourself.
Yeah.
So,
there's a lot to be said about that, man. And I think for some people, it has become so hard for them to be honest with themselves, and I feel like it's becoming more and more prevalent in our culture these days is just, And maybe it's placing too much value on other people's opinions. Maybe it's the social media thing. Maybe it's, I don't know what, right?
Well,
but
we want to be accepted. We want to be liked.
accepted. Maybe that's it, right? Accepted and liked, some of us, right? And so it leads to people just not knowing or not caring, about what's going on with them. And then this happens, right? You get into a rut and you got to scream at yourself in the mirror to get out of it.
But this is why you surround yourself with people who are willing to hold you accountable, tell you to get your freaking crap together, tell you to stop, going home and looking at porn, tell you to stop cheating on your wife, tell you to stop doing this or stop doing that, stop doing these drugs, right? It's like, hey, you want to have an occasional drink? That's cool, but you should probably stop drinking, dude, because you have a problem. You know what I mean? And it's starting to affect you being a dad. It's starting to affect your business. It's starting to affect your marriage and these other relationships in your life.
Yeah.
A real friend will tell you that stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. You know what? And bringing it back to the topic of leadership, I happen to think one of the non-negotiable traits of a leader is being able to have hard conversations, right? So talking to somebody as if they're your friend in the sense that you care about them, right? And you care about them so much that you're willing to be honest. But so many people, and here's the other end of the spectrum, Ben, right, about being liked. So many people are so worried about being liked that they will never take that opportunity to be honest.
I think if you're honest with somebody and they take it the wrong way, and you really truly gave it to them in a very loving and compassionate way, and they decide to, hey, I'm cutting you off, right? I see it happen all the time. That's not on you.
No, of course not.
Yeah. Clearly, they are not meant to be in your circle, right?
That's right.
And sometimes you have to tighten up your circle. So, because they're going to end up pulling you down to the level that they're at. Mm-hmm. And so now it may take some time. Maybe they'll come back and realize, like, you were absolutely right, dude. I'm sorry. I should have took that advice or whatever. But if they decide to cut you off, let them go.
Yeah.
Let them go.
You have to.
Move on and help somebody else,
At the end of the day, I have a saying, it's candor is kindness, right? You owe it to your friends. You owe it to the people that you love to be honest with them.
Yep.
And even if that means not having to sugarcoat it, right? Saying, hey, you watch too much porn. Don't step out on your wife. Put down the bottle, in a way that they can understand. Don't beat around the bush.
Yeah.
So that's good. Listen, we got about 15 minutes left. I want to be respectful, especially since this is a special episode. I want to know if you have any questions for me, Ben.
Yeah, I kind of do.
All right.
So how long have you been doing podcasting?
2019. So 5 years.
Okay. What is one of the biggest pieces of advice that you would give to somebody who was thinking about starting a podcast?
Don't overthink it. Be consistent. Consistency wins every time. It wins over the equipment. It wins over the lighting. It wins over the cameras. If you're consistent, that is probably one of the biggest driving factors in success when it comes to podcasts. So many podcasts are started but never finished. And mine will never be finished, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So there's that. And then I would also say focus on the guest. The podcast is not about you. It's about who you bring on the show. Unless you have a podcast where you're just talking to the camera, right? That's a different story. But if you have a podcast like this,
sure.
I talked for an hour and 15 minutes. I'm giving you 15 minutes to ask me questions. It ain't about me, right? It's about you. It's about what my audience can learn from you. So there's that. And you can start small. You don't need the microphones. You don't need the studio. You don't need any of that. You could do a podcast on your phone these days, and you can do it for next to nothing.
Yeah, consistency is key, I think, in anything.
100%. Yeah. So absolutely.
So how old is your Windy City equipment?
We celebrated 21 years.
And at what year roughly did you start kind of reaping the fruits of running the business?
That is an excellent question, Ben. One that no one has ever asked me before. It would probably be year 15.
Isn't it interesting how it takes that long to build something that's stable and consistent and constantly delivering, right?
Yeah.
And not only is it delivering for you and your family, but also delivering for other people's families.
Yeah.
Right. So why did you start your company to begin with?
So full disclosure, my dad started the company.
Okay.
It was him. He was he was working as a foreman in a bakery in Chicago. Came out to Arizona because he hated the cold.
Hence Windy City.
Okay.
Okay.
That's right. And so he worked it by himself for a few years. And simultaneously, I had moved out to California to be a stuntman, which that was the original family business. I made the decision to get into this business and to work with my dad, who was just a one-man show at the time, because I saw opportunity. I didn't know what, why, or how I saw opportunity. I just knew that A, there was opportunity, and B, there was a bunch of stuff going on in my stunt career. I didn't like who I had become. And so I knew I needed to change, and I knew I saw something in the business that I could sink my teeth into, that I could learn, that I could throw myself into, and that I could build into something bigger than myself.
Nice. How many broken bones have you had?
None.
Really?
Yes. It's funny. You're the first person to ask me that, knowing that I'm a stuntman. Yeah, but no, I have not broken a single bone ever in my life. My grandfather, on the other hand, who just passed away last month at 95,
Wow.
has had over 100 broken bones. He broke his back twice, legs 25 times.
How old are you?
I am 38.
Okay. My grandfather just turned 92 a couple of days ago.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah.
oh man, I had a question on tap too. I'm like rapid fire with these things.
That's all right.
So what, name like 3 movies that you did stunts in?
Eagle Eye with Shia LaBeouf. Back in the day.
It's a great movie, by the way.
I know.
Yeah.
It's a really good movie.
What scene?
So I was rigging on that one.
Okay.
But Matinee, when I was really young with John Goodman. During my time in California, I did some TV shows. I was on an episode of Cold Case Files, where the kid's in the grocery store and he gets hit in the face with a crutch, and that was me. I did a pretty popular Alltel commercial. You remember that company, Alltel Wireless? So there was a commercial where they had the T-Mobile guy, the Verizon guy, the Alltel guy. They had all these guys right in these commercials. And there was one commercial where they were sitting on the sidelines of a football field looking at the cheerleaders, and they're like, oh, my character was like, how could this day get any worse? And then right then and there, he gets pummeled by a football player in full gear. And funny story, that was actually the commercial that led me to remove myself from the stunt business altogether.
Interesting.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time to any period in time, for like a day, 24 hours, where would you go?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, this is I don't need 24 hours. I need like 30 seconds. So, first time I've ever said this publicly. So, about 10 years ago, my wife lost her sister. She was 26 years old. They were Irish twins, 11 months apart. And her sister had the flu. Her name was Katie. And she got admitted to the hospital. And it was just the flu, right? It was just the flu. And my wife's a bit of a worrywart. And I remember that night, before we went to bed, I was trying to make her feel better. And she said, I'm really worried about my sister. And I said something like, Kelly, this is not an episode of Grey's Anatomy. Everything's going to be fine. And 3 hours later, we got a phone call that her sister was dead. And that sentence, Ben, has haunted me for a while.
Wow.
So if I could go back in time, I would just
take that back. Wow. That's deep, dude. Oh, that's some deep reflection right there for sure. I think it's also a lot of pressure that you put yourself under with that. I feel like grace is a real thing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So
yeah, you're not wrong, and I recognize that.
I didn't expect that to go there. Okay. When you think about your childhood, what smell comes to mind?
Oh my gosh. What, you have a book of these questions, man? What smell comes to mind? That's funny. It's my grandfather's basement in Florida. He lived on
They have basements in Florida?
So
I would think they would flood.
So he lives like in the Everglades, like in Groveland, Florida, right? Not quite the Everglades, but he lives on an island surrounded by swamp. And so you walk in, the first floor is his basement, and then you like walk up the stairs to the rest of the house. But his basement always had a very distinct smell. I spent a lot of time there when I was a kid. And so that's
like a basement-y smell.
Kind of like a basement-y, musky, maybe a little bit of weed. You know, if I'm being honest,
Okay.
like reflecting back, I think I probably picked up a little bit of that in there.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That's good stuff. Who is your most influential person in your life?
in my life,
Yeah.
influential person in my life. I'd probably have to say, if it's straight influence, it's going to be my wife. She keeps me grounded. She's the opposite of me in many, many ways. And I think that's why we work really well together. And so there's this constant push and pull, but always for the greater good. So I think that from an influence standpoint, it'd be my wife. My dad's in a close second.
That's a great quality to have in a partner.
100%.
I'll give you one more. Thinking back to your childhood again, who was your childhood hero?
Walter Payton.
Okay.
Never Die Easy. That was his famous, well, that was his book, but it was also what he said, right? His motto was never die easy, never go down without a fight. Always give it 110%. And I carried that with me for a long, long time. He was one of the greatest football players that ever lived. He was on the team that I love, Chicago Bears. Unfortunately, love, hate, whatever. Yeah. But yeah.
Not a super high performing team.
Yeah, not just well, we won't get into that. I don't have another 3 hours to bitch about it. But yeah, Walter Payton and that term, never die easy, has stuck with me. I never go down without a fight, man.
Yeah, that's some great advice for sure, right? And again, somebody's words impacting another person, right, for the rest of their lives. So never underestimate the power of your words.
No, absolutely not. Awesome. Well, I'm going to ask you one more question.
Sure.
So I like to ask this because it reveals so much about a person. But how do you define success as a whole? I mean, what does that look like? You talked at the very beginning of the show, Ben, about eternity and how you do everything you do with eternity in mind. That's the first time I've ever heard that. So I'm very curious about what your definition of success is.
If you asked me what my definition of success was 2.5 years ago, it would be a completely different answer than what it is today. So back then it was about houses and cars and money and status and living a luxurious lifestyle. To me, that was success back then. Now, to me, success is living a life that is going to be pleasing to God when I show up before his throne. What's he going to say to me, right? And I think that a lot of us today have zero clue of what that day is going to be like. We have zero clue of the sovereignty of God, and zero clue of how holy he is. And I just want to strive to be a man of integrity and live a life that when I show up before his throne one day, he's going to say, well done, So that's my definition of success.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Ben, listen, thanks for driving 12 hours to get here. Thanks for giving me your valuable time. And I hope that my audience can take away everything that I did during this episode and the hour and a half we got to spend together. Great conversation, man. And I hope we can do it again soon.
Appreciate you.
All right, man.
We'll see you guys.
Adios.
Thanks for listening to the Blue is the New White podcast. Be sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes. For more, please follow at Josh Zolan on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Or visit us at blueisthenewwhite.com, where we create success, not debt, and build blue-collar heroes.